we're going to make a lasagna dish today using 2 kilograms of clay that has some grog in it. It could be earthenware clay or stoneware clay. In this case it's stoneware clay. Here are some dishes that I made on the wheel. When you make a square dish on the wheel, you throw it round and then you bend it when it's a little bit drier and put it onto the base. So that's a whole different thing. But when you're making a lasagna dish, you must consider that you're going to be wearing oven gloves. So you really need nice big lugs on the sides so that the oven gloves don't fall off. If you don't have oven gloves, then you need a nice big rim so that it doesn't slip off when you take it out of the oven. So I want to show you how I planned the size of these little lasagna dishes. What I did was I took some lasagna sheets, and they're a fairly standard size, so I think this is quite accurate. Then I drew around it in my little notebook and measured them, and then I found the size of 2 next to each other and worked out the shrinkage of the clay. This is a very useful thing to do. This is the particular clay that we're using. This was originally 10 centimeters long, and now when I measure it after the glaze firing, it is 9 centimeters long. So if you're good at mathematics, you can work out the shrinkage. So after all that, I have decided to have a finished size of 20 centimeters by 21 centimeters. And then if I add the shrinkage onto that, I need to make it 22 centimeters by 23 centimeters. If you see that your slab isn't fitting your template, you can cut off the rounded edges and join them roughly, because you're still going to roll your clay and compress those joints. Put down your guides that are around 6 millimeters thick on either side of your slab and roll it until it's a nice even thickness. Now you need to bevel the edges at a 45-degree angle. This is so that you've got the maximum area joining between the base and the wall. That will help it to be a strong join so it won't crack open in the firing. Now you need to also make your 3 side templates fit the remainder of the clay. So you do the same as you did with your base, where you cut and roughly join to make it fit, because you're going to compress it when you roll it. So after about half an hour in the sun, my slabs are a little bit stiffer. You mustn't wait until they're completely leather hard, because then they'll be difficult to bend and they might crack when you bend them on the outside. So at this point, or if you're not putting them in the sun, just leave them for about an hour or an hour or two. You'll have to just watch them. You need to bevel the edges of the sides and cross hatch them, ready to join to your base. Just remember not to cut off the bottom edge, only cut off the top corner. And try and get it at a 45-degree angle, but it's not that important because you are going to put a coil on the inside. Then you can bevel these edges so that they join nicely. Also take off a corner there. Then you need to scratch it. I like to use toothpicks all glued together with some masking tape in the middle, because that gives you a nice fine scratching mark. You have to cross hatch, or you can use a fork or one of these scratchy tools. So you need to cross hatch all the way around down the bottom here, and a little bit in on the inside, because you're going to put a coil there. So wherever the new clay touches must be scratched and slipped. I'm actually going to put these on the table so that I can join them before I put them onto the base. Okay, so I found that to make them overlap and fit perfectly with a beveled edge, I need to bevel this side of each one and the opposite side of each one. So to do the opposite side, you need to turn it over and then scratch the other side. And then put some slip on there. So each one needs to be slipped as well. Put them all facing the same way at the top there. And then slide them up to each other and over. Let me show you from this side. Right over, keeping this line straight. If you're not sure about that line, just push it straight with the ruler. Then press it on. Work it in. It's very important to get this very well bonded, because this is a structural join. It's easier to do it now against the surface than when it's standing in the air, if you want it like that. So get this all done. Turn it over carefully. Right, and you need to do all your joins like that. This other one as well. We'll do this outside join at the end because we're not sure of their exact fit. Make sure you don't press so hard that you get it thinner at the join. If you do get it thinner there, rather get another bit of clay and put it over to strengthen it. It gets more and more tricky to turn it over. But it is possible. There we go. So this is the outside. I'm just giving it extra strength by putting the rib over it. Now you've got your box that you've also beveled. You've cut the corners slightly rounded so it's more attractive. And let's slip on it. So I'm going to start. One of these sides is narrower than the other. This is the narrower side, that's the wider side. So your handles are going to go here. They could also go here, but I think logically I'm going to put my handles there. So I'm going to start the join in the middle of that, so if that's a bit messy, you won't notice it as much. So now this is a tricky part. You might want to get someone to help you do this because it's so long. Want to ease it into place without cracking it, and that's why it mustn't be dry, otherwise it would crack when you join it. Oh, it looks like I might have extra clay here. So I'm starting in the center and pressing it around there. Make sure that the wall is touching the floor, the tabletop, and then it's going to be joining the bevel on the inside there. And look, I have made this much longer. My calculation must have been wrong. So this is the only really tricky bit, but once it's on, you can shape it and get it to match the shape of your base, so you're having a rounded off almost a square. And then where it overlaps here, you need to cut this also at an angle so that it fits on the inside of this join. So I'm going to cut it down there. Straight down. Let's do it from here. Then scratch and slip that. To the inside and then overlap it just like we did on the table, but this is now in the air. If you're worried about any of the joints, you can put small clay over them and work it in. I'm just trying to avoid that so that I don't have extra clay that I have to work in. But this one looks like it might like an extra little coil, so I'm going to take a piece of clay and put it over there. But not a lot of clay, just very thin amount so that it's a bit stronger. Right, so now I need to make a little coil the size of my little finger to go in this corner. So to make a little coil, I take my scraps that were left over and have a wet surface here that you can work on. Not too wet, just damp, so that your coil doesn't dry out. And then open your fingers out wide and roll. So if your coil goes flat and goes good, you need to put on its thin edge, then pat it down to square, and then it'll go around more easily. But the best way to make a coil is by rolling very slowly and just feeling what you're rolling. If you roll too fast, you can't really feel what you're doing. And you know when to leave the pressure off. It's actually already wet from the slip that I put on before. And I'm going to press this in from one side to the other, but I have to support it on the outside so that I don't push the joint open. And once it's joined all the way around, I'll then smooth it in, the top and the bottom, and then smooth it so that you can't see it. It must disappear, that coil. You mustn't be able to see it. As you go around, it stretches. That's why we don't put the coil in first. Do it from one side to the other. We don't want to trap air behind the coil. Your finger is exactly the right shape to work the inside of your lasagna dish, this corner here. So just do a lot of smoothing, but support it on the outside so that it doesn't bulge out as you press from the inside. It's still quite wet. And then you can take your credit card and smooth it on the outside all the way around, and along the top. And you can also take a damp sponge and smooth the inside with that. And wherever you feel it needs extra smoothing. We still need to flip the whole pot over and refine this outside edge, which we will do with a board, but it's still too wet for that. So for now, we can look at this rim and do something interesting with it. If you have extra clay, which I don't think you'll have enough of with this pack that I'm giving you, but if you do have more clay, you could put a coil of clay so that you can get a bigger rim around the edge. If you're giving it a nice big handle, then you don't need that rim really. So your challenge will be to make an interesting handle. I'm going to make a simple handle using a cookie cutter. So I thought I would try this. See, it's quite thick. It's about 1 centimeter thick. smooth it off and then cut it in half. And see what that looks like. Another simple handle for hand building is a twisted handle, which I showed you for the citrus squeezer, but I'll show you again here. So I'm going to make a few different handles with the clay that I've got left and see which one I prefer. Now my pot is leather hard. The joins have started to set a little bit better, so I'm happy to work on the underneath side and then join the handles at this point. So put a board on top and put your hand right underneath and then flip it over. Then take that all off. And now you can just check if there are any places where it hasn't made a good bond. You run your finger over it and join it in. In fact, do that all the way around. Now, because the inside is curved, we've actually got a little bit of extra clay here, and it will look neater if we can cut a bit of it off. But it might be a bit tricky trying to cut it like this, so maybe it's better just to scrape it. And get a bevel here. Then the glaze can go just to that edge and leave this area unglazed. Can you see it's bowing in a little bit? I just have to make sure that I push it back down again when I turn it around. If you decide to make strap handles, you might need to support them until they're leather hard by placing something just the right height underneath each handle. So when you're finished putting your handles on your lasagna dish, you just need to smooth it off and check it all over. But also you've got the sides here that are quite plain and boring when it's filled with lasagna. You're going to see these sides. So maybe you can think of perhaps carving a design in, or painting a design on if you have some ceramic colors, or else taking some little coils of clay and decorating a filigree design around the outside. I'm thinking of just putting that there, scratch and slip and then join it on very carefully. That's what I might do, or else a flower. So that's a nice fun thing that you can still add on to your project. Now what we're hoping is that the pasta sheets are going to fit nicely inside here after it's shrunk. This clay we've used has got grog in it, which is ground up bisquified clay that's been added back into the clay to make it coarser, but also gives it more thermal shock ability, so that when it goes into the oven it doesn't crack. But I do recommend always, when you're baking with homemade pottery things, is to put it into your oven when it's cool, before you switch your oven on, and then let it heat up with the oven, and never put it under the grill. So those are the two things that I think will mean that your pot lasts longer. It can also go in the microwave, and it can go into the dishwasher, but never put it in the microwave empty. It must always have food in it, and also in the oven. Yeah, so I hope that you enjoy making your lasagna and whatever else you want to cook in there, and maybe you can share some of your favorite recipes with me.